Hey, I'm Mike Z with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, and in today's video we're going to be discussing swirl marks. You know, that pigtails and zigzags you commonly get with power sanding. What we're going to be discussing is the proper grit sequence you can look for in your finishing schedule, tips and tricks to help prevent creating them in the first place, and getting the most sanding power for your money. Let's jump in. These are swirl marks. They're typically going to be unsightly marks that don't match up with the grain of the wood. Sometimes they can be half moons strung together. Sometimes they can just be a bunch of smaller marks all put together. But either way, they're unsightly on your bare wood piece. Swirl marks will eventually happen in the coarser grits, and what this video is going to show you is how you can get rid of them easily and effectively every time. Let's start with the basics. Here's a piece of wood we sanded with 80 grit. You'll notice the depth of that 80 grit original scratch. If we sand with 120 on top of that, what we're doing is actually lowering the peaks of the original 80 grit scratch. And then if we follow it up with 180, we're lowering down the peaks of the 120 to meet the original scratch left by the 80 grit. This is called the leveling principle in abrasives. So on our subject piece, we have bare wood cherry stained, clear coated, gray paint, white paint, and this will show you the depth of scratch down that sandpaper can cause. So let's go ahead and start out with 80 grit on this workpiece. You'll notice that it removes the stock extremely quickly, removes the paint quickly, and it makes very fast work of this job. What you want to look for is uniform scratches, half circles, half moons if you will. They kind of look like this. What that tells you is that you're getting an even amount of pressure on the workpiece, leveling everything down nice and even. So if 80 grit does all these wonderful things, fast stock removal, lasts a long time, why wouldn't you use it? Well, sometimes on certain applications like cherry and maple, it actually leaves too deep of a scratch and causes pigtail swirls. This is something that naturally happens with this grit, but in order to avoid it, maybe you need to start at 120. Let's take a look. Sometimes to save yourself a step in the process, it's a lot better to actually start with a grit or two finer than what you suspect you need for your project. In this case here, we're using 120. You'll notice that the 120 doesn't remove the paint as fast, but it's a lot more even and level. So with that said, you're still going to get pigtails and swirl marks, but they're not going to be as deep as the 80 grit scratch. As a matter of fact, 80 grit is 60% larger of a grain than 120. So if you don't need to start out that aggressive, save yourself the time and the money and start out with 120 instead. So starting out with a finer grit will save you more time and money, which is what Klingspor does when it brings you the most sanding power for your money. So let's talk improper sanding techniques. In this part here, you notice that I'm going to make this mark on the sanding pad so you can see how it rotates. First thing you don't want to do is start the sander above the workpiece and then place it down on the workpiece at full speed. Even with a pneumatic sander, whenever you do this, what you're doing is causing dishing and swirl marks, very deep gouges that are going to be harder to sand out later. The best fundamental practice whenever using a random orbit sander, whether it's electric or pneumatic, is to start the sander on the workpiece. When you're done with the sanding process for that grit is to take the sander off and turn it off. So remember, on, off, off. Another improper sanding technique is to stop the sander while on the workpiece. This also causes swirl marks with the previous grit that you used. A random orbit sander should always be sanded the full width of the disc, never put on an angle because it's not an angle grinder. While it does look like it's removing material quicker, it's actually building up heat, causing gumming to happen. So if you happen to have discs that are loading on the outside edges, typically this is caused by an improper sanding angle. You should always be parallel to the work surface in order to ensure proper leveling. Now let's take a look at another improper sanding technique. This is the workpiece vibrating on a flat surface. These vibrations then cause the workpiece itself to vibrate because of the random orbit action. This causes swirl marks as well. These scratches typically look like cat scratches, where they're just real short against the grain, off at an angle. And these can be eliminated by using an isolating sanding pad, a rubber block, or even a moving blanket, something that'll isolate the actual workpiece from the work table, not causing the workpiece to vibrate. If you notice there's this low spot on your workpiece, we typically want to angle the sander to get just that spot, but that's not the way to do it. Instead, keep the sander flat, moving it across the entire area, leveling everything around it to the lower spot. It doesn't take as long, and you'll have a beautiful finish when you're done. So hopefully today's video explained a little bit more about why you might be experiencing swirl marks in your workpiece. I'm Mike Z with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop. Please check out Klingspor Abrasives USA on YouTube for more technical videos and product videos. And on behalf of everyone at Klingspor Abrasives, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.